Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. More inmate assaults, needed improvements to cameras and locks, and not enough detention officers to deal with all of it. Those are the problems Durham County Sheriff sees inside his detention center, and he's asking the county for more money to fix them. WRAL's Monica Casey sat down with the sheriff and found out these are not just problems in his county. Monica, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so how did you start looking into this budget request from the sheriff's office?
This all started when I was working on a wider budget story about what is in the county manager's proposed budget and the city manager's proposed budget. The budgets are especially interesting this year for a couple reasons. We have a new county manager in Durham, so this is her first budget in this role, a new city manager in the city of Durham, so it's his first budget in this role, and all of that with a time of a bit of economic uncertainty for people here in the Bowl City, and a lot of things people want to see addressed. Of course, we have ongoing issues with Durham Public Schools and what they are requesting in the budget versus what the county is offering, but all kinds of other things that are funded by these budgets. The city takes care of things like police and fire, streets and sidewalks and parks, whereas the county has to take care of the schools, the courts, the jail, and that kind of stuff, social services. So it all started when I was drilling down into what's being proposed. The way it works is the city and county managers bring a budget to the elected officials. They have a ton of work sessions and public hearings. Those elected officials hear from members of different departments about things that may not have made it into the county manager's proposal that they would still like to get funding for. And then, of course, they will hear from the public about all of this before they approve the budgets. That'll be in June for the fiscal year starting in July.
And when it comes to the sheriff's office and law enforcement budget, what is going on inside of the Durham Detention Center based on what you learned?
So the majority of sheriff's office employees are actually the ones working in the detention center rather than the deputies that you see out and about. There are about 225 roles within the detention center, and there are a little under 198 deputies. So the sheriff overseeing the jail, it's one of his absolute top priorities. And he told me today the safety of people in the jail, both the inmates and his employees, is above all else a top priority. So the jail itself, the Durham County Detention Center, you've probably seen that building in downtown Durham. It's almost 30 years old, so it's getting a bit dated. But one of the things that we don't think about sometimes with the jail, it's 24 hours a day. It's open 7 days a week. People have to be there all the time. Right now, there are about 445 people in the jail awaiting trial here in Durham. And so that is a lot of strain and stress on that building. One example is just the kitchen. You have to feed these almost 450 people. The sheriff tells me they're making an average of 1,500 meals at a minimum each day. And those are hot meals for people. That's necessary. It's a quality of life issue. Some of the equipment in the kitchen actually predates the building itself. Some of it was moved over from the old jail. And when the equipment in the kitchen goes down, that's a ton of people who aren't getting to eat hot meals. And they're not able to just outsource that to other companies because of all the security issues that come with being a jail. On top of that, with the kitchen, it's not just the quality of life issue right there, but it's also a reentry issue. The kitchen offers an opportunity for people who are inmates in the jail to learn what's called safe serve skills and culinary skills. That way, if and when they leave the jail, they have a certification to go get a job working in a restaurant. So the sheriff told me today he believes reentry into our community should start as soon as a person enters into the detention center. And the kitchen is one way of doing that. In addition to that, in the jail, we are seeing an increase in assaults of inmates on inmates and inmates on detention officers. It's not just an issue we're seeing here in Durham, but we do have some numbers for Durham. The sheriff told county commissioners that they are recovering an average of 20 homemade weapons every month in the jail. It amounts to over 200 in a year. And he says, these weapons are anything from pieces of a broomstick that have been sharpened to toothbrushes, pieces of metal. And so safety when it comes to these assaults is of an increased top of mind situation for the sheriff because of that. So one of the things that he is asking for in this upcoming budget is to fund stab-resistant protective vests for detention officers. Right now, they don't have that. And with this increase in assaults, that is something he wants to see for those detention officers. On top of that, we have the issue of staffing in the jail. I mentioned that the majority of sheriff's office employees are detention center ones rather than deputies out patrolling. There are 225 positions in the jail at all different levels. Right now, they have about 81 vacancies. So that's a vacancy rate of about 36% in the jail. And that has a huge ripple effect because it has to be staffed. Right now, on average, they have about one detention center officer for every 48 inmates in the jail. It's another safety and security issue, especially when you think back on the fact that they don't have those vests. So the sheriff is getting creative, in his words, by having to use mandatory overtime for some of the deputies who are usually out patrolling the streets. Instead, they sometimes have to pull these shifts in the jail. The state also has a requirement that anyone who's working in a detention center has to be certified to do that. So the sheriff has instituted a dual certification program so that his deputies can pull that mandatory overtime and be in the jail.
Okay, let's take a quick break right there. We'll be right back. Monica, before the break, you were laying out all of these different challenges that the sheriff there in Durham County is seeing. How does the funds that he's asking for work into the county's budget?
Well, some of them made the budget and some of them did not, as of right now. One of the things that did make the budget, not as much detention center related, but sheriff's office related, is funding for new deputies. Durham is growing, as is the rest of the Triangle, but a particular area of Durham that is seeing a ton of growth is down in Research Triangle Park. And so the sheriff got funding to hire 5 new deputies to specifically serve that area. It's not only going to allow for better service in that area, but it's also going to take the burden off other deputies around the county not having to travel down to that area. Another item that the sheriff asked for that is being funded is vehicle replacement for some of his deputies, new cars, new SUVs, that kind of thing. When it comes to the detention center itself, the kitchen equipment is part of phase 1 of a countywide equipment replacement capital project. It's going to cost over $370,000 to re-outfit and fix up that kitchen, and it's going to take time as well. When it comes to the protective vests that we mentioned for detention officers, this request actually goes back to last year. It wasn't funded in last year's budget, and as of right now, as the county manager's proposed budget stands, it's not included as a line item in that budget, but the sheriff's office does have a note in their presentation that they've worked to identify alternative funding for those vests. That's something that we are hearing from the sheriff, that not only is he getting creative when it comes to staffing and overtime, but he's having to get creative when it comes to where to find the money. He says they are always applying for as many grants and that kind of thing as possible. In terms of staffing, A lot of it just comes down to money. The sheriff does say, they offer signing bonuses for detention officer roles. They have competitive salaries compared to other roles here in Durham. And he's hoping that people who apply to work in the detention center are ones who want to make a difference.
And how does all of this compare to other counties in our area?
Well, so when it comes to the increase in assaults inside of the detention center, Sheriff Birkhead here in Durham tells us that's not just a Durham issue. When it comes to the aging infrastructure in the jail, we have seen clearly in our reporting that it's not just a Durham issue. One pretty drastic and glaring example is what's going on over in Vance County. That building is incredibly old. They are having all kinds of issues when it comes to cells not locking, a lack of surveillance video, all kinds of issues with that. In that case, the state of North Carolina, the Department of Health and Human Services, actually got involved up in Vance County. The population of the jail was around 170 when they got involved in early April, and they ordered the Vance County Sheriff and the people under him to depopulate that jail because there were just so many issues. They could not confirm the safety of people inside of it. So as of yesterday, that number has dropped all the way to 31. It is still not as low as the state wants it, given all of the issues there in Vance County. We obtained a new letter on Wednesday from the state to Vance County as we've continued to watch what's going on there in the jail. And in essence, it says that Vance County has taken appropriate steps to deal with some of these issues, but they're still not where they need to be. They have taken steps such as putting out a proposal to find a company to repair the video camera surveillance system. They also have instituted policies requiring their detention officers to wear their body cameras at all times because they were having issues with contraband getting into the jail. They've deployed more metal detectors, a body scanner, and clear bag only policies. They are also making some strides in staffing. The county commission authorized some pretty high supplemental pay for deputies to pull shifts inside of the detention center. And they have some new managers coming in there now as well. They also have made strides in fixing up the fire detection system and alarm panel, as well as some of the locks in some of the pods. But they still have a long way to go there in Vance County.
Okay. Monica, thank you so much. We appreciate your reporting on this. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. That's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.